Welcome back to BCM in the AM. I am your host, Turner, and today we are here with one of my favorite people. If Protestants gave out sainthoods, she would have one.
Aw,
It's Miss Kim Slagle.
Turner.
How are you, Kim?
I'm good today. Thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. Um, so, Kim, we know each other from church,
We
so
do.
we've known each other, what, almost 4 years now?
4 years of
That's
your
crazy.
craziness.
I still feel like I was like the little freshman that came in and was like, who's the sweet lady?
You've grown so much, Turner.
But today I wanted to have you on to talk about going home because I know this is for many folks here at the B. This is kind of their first time. They've been freshmen. They've come up here. They've lived the hardcore college life, dorm life,
Mm,
just the constant busy, and now they're kind of getting ready to wrap up and go home as finals finish. And I know
yeah.
that feels for me. It felt like a completely foreign and different world, and I wasn't really equipped to deal with what do I do in that like month and a half off with the way UT's schedule is of
Oh, yeah.
still using the time at home the way I need to.
Yeah, it's a big change. I went to East Tennessee State in Johnson City and graduated back in 1989. And those 4 years of college are life changing. I met my husband there, got married. But I can clearly remember leaving at 17 and being homesick the first semester and just yearning to go back home and sleep and eat all my favorite foods and see my little brother and all my old friends. And of course, the way I pictured it wasn't quite the way it was in reality, but it was good. It's what you make it.
Yeah, I know for me it was so strange because with how late we get out here anymore, you get home and your friends from other schools have already been back for 2 weeks and are like, you're in the middle of family Christmases as soon as you get back.
Yes, and your family wants to swallow you whole because they've missed you so much.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you've got to make all your appearances right in a row and
Oh,
make sure
yeah.
you say hi to everybody.
Oh, yeah. That's a tough one. I raised two boys. Toby's now 32, going on 33 the day after Christmas, and Jake's 31. And they're both married, and they've never lived here in Knoxville, where we live now. My husband's retired Army. We traveled around a lot, so the boys were used to home being, the people and not a place. And
Hmm.
so relocating for them wasn't a big struggle. But me having them out of the house when they started college was awful. I had to close the door the first few months because every time I walked by and looked in there, it just felt so empty in my soul.
Yeah,
And I just, I missed them, even though I'm saying, oh, you're doing great. Keep on. You're awesome. We'll see you, for a long time at the holidays.
yeah. Where did they go to school?
Toby went to Carson Newman, and Jacob went to Lenore Ryan up in Hickory, North Carolina. Toby now, he was in Los Angeles for 10 years, and now he and his wife, Lindsay, and their son Reese are in Nashville. And Jake's a child counselor, and him and his wife live in Statesville near Charlotte. So I get to see him pretty frequently. It's about 3.5 hours each way.
Okay,
We're
yeah.
in the middle.
Yeah, that's about my drive home.
Oh yeah, so it's not bad.
No, no. Of course, I do hate I-40. You just leave the mountains and then it
Oh,
just gets flat. It's
oh
not
yeah,
fun. It's a much better drive coming back.
yeah. You might as well double your time around the holidays driving.
Oh, yeah.
It's never ending. But yeah, I love when the boys come home even today. But it's easier now. Their wives are lovely. I've got a grandbaby, which is the bomb. But during the college years, um, it was a time when I was learning to let go of them. And so, you guys go home as students, and then there's a whole other side of the parents. You know, it's a new dynamic for us too.
Hmm.
So, especially as the freshmen go back home, it's a radical change from August to December, just in their maturity level, their independence level. And, you guys going home engaged or having a new boyfriend or a career change, just sort of blows our mind.
Hmm.
And then we want to sort of make sure everything's okay and realize, we're not in control anymore. We're not the go to. Your world doesn't revolve around us. Because we were sort of the center as you grew up, sort of guiding your schedule and your bedtime and what you ate, what you drank, and who you talked to and who's left over. And it's like, big difference. So we feel a little out of control even with you coming home. So it's a good thing, but, there has to be new respect and boundaries set between the parents and the kids, even as you go home.
Oh, yeah. And I know when I get back, usually it's finals are done. You go back in a coma, basically, and you're
Oh.
just like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to see anything. I want to stare at a wall.
Oh,
And then when
yeah.
I get bored of the wall, I'll turn to the other one
Mm hmm.
and watch it for a while. So was that, especially as a parent, is
Oh,
that difficult to
yes.
like your kids get home and it's like I haven't seen you in 4 months,
Yeah.
and they go I don't want to see
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah. The minute I saw their face, I was like, I just wanted to squeeze them to death and ask them a million questions. And they just had sort of the blank zombie stare. And after about, the first day or two, I realized all they wanted to do was come home, crawl in their bed. They didn't want anything changed in their bedroom. They made lots of comments, and it didn't go over well if I had moved things or gotten rid of things, God forbid. But they'd crawl in their bed and they'd hibernate like little bears for 2 or 3 days, and I would just check on them and maybe slide in some food. And they didn't really welcome questions. They're like, "Mom, can we just talk about that later? I'm just so tired." And then about the third day, they'd sort of grunt and get up and come into the living room and like, "Mom, did you make lasagna?" I'm like, "Oh, of course." Go to the store. "Mom, did you make any of those chocolate oatmeal cookies?" Of course I did. Go to the store. And it just, I'm trying to fulfill every wish just because I want to be that mom. And I love that Southern woman in me. That's my love language, is cooking for them.
Yeah.
So just cooking for them, and then like, just sitting there and eating so much I thought they'd get sick. But they were just trying to settle back into the things that they did love about home. But then as they'd wake up and I think, we're going to talk more, all of a sudden their phone started going off.
Hmm.
And they wanted to go visit all of their old friends from school and plan activities. And I didn't get to spend nearly as much time with them as I had planned. And that sort of hurt my feelings at first. But then I was like, this is their new family.
Hmm.
They enjoy me, but they don't need big doses to feel like they're loving on me.
Yeah.
So that was a little tough. I was a little jealous. I won't lie. But when they'd come home, they really didn't want me setting a curfew. I'd be like, "Oh, you'll be home by 11, won't you?" And they're like, "No, I may not be home at all. I may just sleep there." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, will you be home for breakfast?" "Well, I don't know. I'll let you know." And I was like, and that was enough. Just the fact that they would keep me informed, because once they're under my roof, I felt sort of responsible for them. And if they weren't there, I worried about them if it was 2 a.m. and I was awake looking for them.
Yeah.
So they were very sweet about that. But I know it sort of like chafed them a little bit at first. So I was like, okay, they're not my children anymore. They're my grown men.
Yeah. Well, I know you mentioned earlier about like setting new boundaries
Mm.
and like what does that look like? Because I know
Oh.
like when I get home, that's happened over like a couple summers more than winters really, just because I'm busier in the summers. But I remembered one night I
Mm-hmm.
was out with some people till like it was maybe like 11, and like our
Mm-hmm.
hometown everything closes at super early. So, but it was funny
Mm.
getting those texts from mom and dad like, "Where you at?" Because I just
Like,
you
why
forget
are you
about it because
asking?
on life you're on
Yeah.
autopilot. It's like I've
Mm-hmm.
been out driving Knoxville till 3 a.m. Never gotten a text, and then it's like you
Oh,
get
yeah.
home and it's like, oh yeah, I am home. There are different
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities.
And you're so right, Turner. So when you go home on Christmas break, you're going from like dorm or apartment life to family life in a few hours. I mean, and they've had, they're expecting things to go back to the way they were when you left off in August. They're just planning to pick up right where they were at, and it's not going to be that way. But the biggest thing is I had to respect my son's new independence, and just realize that they are a grown adult and they've had more growth in a 6 month time period than they could have had in years under my roof in a different way.
Hmm.
So the old house rules that used to apply had to be renegotiated, and the expectations are huge. It needed to be discussed and agreed to ahead of time, and that got rid of a lot of the disagreements or the bad feelings. Because my expectation was, if they're not home by 11, they're going to text, let me know where they're at.
Hmm.
So it's just easier for them to say, "Mom, I'll text you if I'm not going to be home, or go on to bed, I'll be fine." And just putting them in the Lord's hands, and just knowing, what, God, you've taken care of them at college. You're going to take care of them here. They're grown adults, and we can openly discuss this, and just let me have a new comfort zone with them.
Yeah. And what was that like? Because like with the gaps and like
Uh,
them coming home, how was it kind of
yeah,
seeing their growth?
we were in Atlanta,
Oh
because
wow.
Joel was still at Pacific Command in Atlanta there, at Fort McPherson, and he had retired, but he was working a contract job. So we were a good 4 to 6 hours from the boys, and we saw them frequently because they played college football, and we never missed a game, especially during fall season and spring season and all that. But just being away from them was really hard for me as a mom, because that was my world. From the time they were little and they put them in my arms, that was just my focus. I still worked and loved working, but they always came first. Them and the home being a place for them to grow up in a godly atmosphere, and you try your best to be the godly parent God wants you to be, but he's put in your soul as a parent to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not as protective of themselves as you are of them. That gives you stress and anxiety. Or if they're not home on time, you're envisioning something happened to them. And, when they're at school, I didn't know where they were or what time it was. So I didn't have anxiety. So them coming home was a big change. And letting them grow up and releasing my hold on them was good for all of us. My husband had an easier time with that. He's a man with boys, and he was like, they're going to be fine. You're fine. Go to bed.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, my baby, they're not home. What if they're in a ditch? Yes, they'll crawl out. But he's just military and much more realistic. And he's like, if they need us, they'll call. Come on, go to bed. And he was a big help with that.
Yeah. And, like, most of the time when they came home, like, in those increments,
Mm-hmm.
did you kind of see growth each time they were home?
I felt like I didn't know them. And as a mom, that just, oh. And we kept in contact, mainly text while they were away and maybe talking once a week when they had time.
Yeah.
'Cause their focus was their friends and that was their new family. And I thanked God every day that, they had people that were there to care for them when I wasn't available and close. So that part was hard with them being away, but just, when the children were born, I gave them to the Lord. The only way you can raise children successfully is to give them back to the Lord from the very beginning. But even when they're in college, you put them in school at class with other people around them, but you tend to not realize that, as children, God tells the children to obey, but that commandment's over once they're not a child anymore.
Yeah.
And then the commandment, of course, honor your parents, is the one that kicks in at that point for always. It's, a permanent one.
Yeah.
But God's purpose for the family is to treat each person we encounter as our brother and sister, and we're supposed to treat them with love and kindness and respect because we're all God's children. And I had to start seeing them more as my brothers in Christ than my children.
Mm-hmm.
And give them the respect they were due, and still be aware that, it's not like you've stopped becoming a parent, but you form a different relationship. And it's a special one because they'll only have one mom.
Yeah.
And that's a special place, but it's more hands-off as they get older. Psalms 133:1 is one of the verses I really went to, and it was, how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. And that's about navigating, a devout life as a family. And God's pleased when we work together in our roles as mother and father and children. And those roles, when they're performed in a biblical manner, bring us closer to Christ. So when, it says you need to leave and cleave, my kids got married. It was a blessing, that Lindsay and Corey are amazing Christian women that they married.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's who their first responsibility is to. And I'm not responsible for my kids, but I'm responsible to them to always set the example.
Yeah.
But family, the things that, the hardships, bring us closer. And that's where you get your love and support. But it's more from a distance. And having lived away with Joel as a military man, for 22 years on active duty service, he was gone a lot. And so the boys and I were really close just from all those deployments.
Yeah. Now, I know when I go home a lot of times, it almost feels, now that, like, I've got an apartment up here in Knoxville, I'm here a good bit in the summer, I'm back usually early in the winter. Going home sometimes almost feels like it's the vacation or you're visiting somewhere else because you've changed, you have changed and you've changed, you feel like quite a bit.
Oh.
And then suddenly you go home, and for me it's a very small town, so it's like I can name you every person I graduated with 2 generations back, their family. But to go back home and then still be expected to be like the kid who gave that speech at graduation, knowing full well that I probably haven't given a second thought to some of what people still remember me as.
Oh, yeah, and I think overcoming their image of you with the new image Christ has grown you into can be hard, because people want to pin labels on you going home, and that can be really difficult, and you've just got to be, true to the Lord and just, remind them, I'm a new creation. This is who I am now. I did those crazy things when I was younger, but I wouldn't choose to do them now. Hope you're not either.
Yeah.
Just being a good friend to them on where they're at.
Yeah.
Because change is good. God calls us to go. And sometimes it's just to another neighborhood, sometimes across the world. But everywhere we go and every life that touches us changes us in some ways. And if we're looking for God's glory in each person, it's going to change us for the better. It's either going to soften us or convict us of something that's lacking in us or something we need to pursue. So people are so important in our life, and home is important. But like I said, being in the military really taught Joel and I early on when I was so homesick,
Yeah.
because I'd grown up in such a beautiful Christian family here on a big farm in Tennessee. And I missed my grandparents and all those cousins and just the sweetness of the small community. And still love it to this day, but I can see value in other places. But home is people. Your home is where your heart is. That's the people. It's not a place. It's not a house. It's not a structure. And that was really painful for me. The first time them coming home for Christmas, I learned a lot about they wanted to sleep, they wanted to eat, they wanted to visit their friends. They wanted to not go to every relative's house on the list. And them informing me helped me manage my expectations. But really realizing when I was packing them up to go back at the end of the trip, that they weren't leaving home here, that they were actually going home to their new home. Their other student friends. Like for you here at UT campus and your professors and the BCM staff and just all the people that you develop into your new family. And that's been a challenge, when you think about coming in August and no one.
Yeah.
And you basically have zero social, scene in your life.
Yeah.
And you've got to develop that into, okay, who do I want to bring into fellowship with me and who do I want to room with and who do I want to do these things with? And a lot of times you're like, nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. It's like you weed out a lot of no's before you find the yeses.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be really open to those new experiences. So I'm just so proud of the college students that come and continue to trust the Lord and realize that, He knows He's only gonna give them His best, if they seek it.
Yeah.
And that's, for who they date and who they become friends with, and what they plan their life journey, what they're going to major in, but just constantly, daily, thy will, not my own, God, seeking His wisdom for each step forward, and being gentle and soft with family. God intends for the family to be successful, and if you don't come from a godly home, then you got saved while you were here. That's so hard. We have so many powerful, Christians in the BCM and throughout college ministry that don't come to know the Lord until they get to college. And they may be the only light going back home, when that time comes. And so, they're going from a secure place with Christian friends and access to church and services and fun and realizing what a joy it is, of our salvation and to be in healthy fellowship with other Christians. And then they may be going home to a family that doesn't really have a close personal relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
And so then that's their challenge, just, how do they dive into that with 2 feet and present the gospel, by actions or words and still be loved and accepted and not make that a whole other issue during the trip.
Yeah.
So they've got a lot on them. I mean, the knowledge they learn, God needs to definitely guide their hearts on how to share it. God wants us to bring this together, and and sometimes your family's not open to that.
Yeah. And I know I'd be naive to just assume that every, person who's, whether this is their first semester, whether they've been here for a while, whether they've been able to truly find that, kind of home on campus, would you have, because I know you and Joel, with as much as y'all traveled around, what advice would you have, or like tips and tricks to finding a home with you, even as you kind of feel very transient in your life?
Joel and I, started, our relationship at ETSU, and we dated 4 years, and we got married while he was in flight school down at Fort Rucker, Alabama, when we were 23. And so we've had a whirlwind of marriage and life and our 2 boys. But we were both Christians when we met and started dating, and our sweet little Christian families were united and prayerful for us. So we've had a good base. Mm-hmm. And so many times, we've always been in church since that day. We've made Christ the center of our marriage. We got married in 1989. So we're at 35 years of marriage, and still happy and enjoy each other, and so thankful. My grandmother always told me, God's only going to send his best for you. And he did, and that was Joel. And Joel draws me closer to Jesus every day. And if you knew him, you'd be like, wow, that's impressive that you see that. And I do. I love him to pieces. And he's gruff as all get out. But he's just funny. It's just the way you interpret what he says. I have to look at what he means and not what he says.
Yeah.
And he would laugh at that. But we always would search for a church even before we arrived at a new location. We wanted to have at least 2 or 3 good options from people that had been there. In the military, you follow people. So I'll say, I know you just left so-and-so. Where'd y'all go to church? For like-minded Christian families. And they say, this one is here. If you live here, this will be closer. And so we always had our boys involved in programs. We were always active in the church. And that really sets the tone for your family. Because when you don't have physical family around you, your church becomes your home. And the boys' friends were, in the church, and they pray for each other, and that's so powerful. So even when they went to college, Jake was very involved in crew. Toby was really involved in FCA. They went to local churches then. They both work in youth ministry now. Yeah. And they just see it as a necessary part of their life to be involved in the family.
Yeah.
And that's something they enjoy, pouring into others and being poured into. Mentorship is crucial at every stage. If you're not having somebody mentor you and then actively mentoring somebody younger than you at every stage of your life, you're just missing out on a huge opportunity. And that's something, is go home and really have your parents, with the guys with men and the girls with women, Mom, mentor me in what, creating a home, a biblical home looks like. And Dad, tell me about your work philosophy. Each generation's so different, but there's value there. And, as an adult going back home, this is a great time for you to get to know your parents and your siblings better from a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
Because, they've changed too. So it's a great time for bonding and just knowledge. It's hard to look in someone's eyes and not get to know them better and understand and have compassion for them. It's easy to talk about somebody when you don't see them.
Yeah.
But when you're actually looking at them in their eyes and you see the vulnerabilities or the doubts or the insecurities, it draws you closer and it helps you to fill voids that they may not know they have. And that's our Christian calling.
Yeah.
So, and you can do that for your family when you're home. And I pray that each one of the students going home is going to go home to a loving, secure place. And I know that isn't going to happen for every one of them. But, but if they can make their part of being at home loving and safe for people around them, which is what Christ does for us, and they can pass it on, everybody around them is going to be blessed.
Absolutely. That was really good. I don't know where to go from here.
Well, I'm not good off the cuff, so I always have notes. Another verse I'd written down was in Galatians 6:2. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. So families are going to celebrate. They're going to face hardships together, experience vulnerability. But the Bible talks continually about family unity. The Bible's all about family. Families work together. That's how they provided and ate and survived. But families should be able to lean on each other and be there for one another in the good and the bad times. So I just think maybe, if your family's not what you desire it to be when you go home, that maybe you can be the source of change in a healthy way, that because you have an outsider's view. You've been away for 6 months, you see things, and you may not change it right off, but you might be able to start sprinkling seeds of, why don't we do this? Or even present a new tradition that, glorifies God or brings people closer, that makes them feel cared for. But everybody in a family wants to feel safe and loved. And those are the two things I try to provide in my home. Hospitality is huge, and God calls us all to have hospitality. And we've talked so much about it, but over this Christmas season, God's preparing a home for us. And we have Holy Spirit in us, so we're preparing our heart. God lives in our heart. So we need to prepare our hearts for God. And it should be a soft, hospitable, wonderful place for Him to live. And so, it's time to, sweep out all the cobwebs in your heart and prepare room and for your family. So, and hopefully your families can do that for you. And when you get home and those arms are open, just remember your family's been through a lot. They've been without you and closed that door in your room. Trust me.
Yeah.
I don't care, good, bad, and different. Those families miss you.
Yeah.
After they've been there. So the things as a mom is, keep your parents updated. Let them have the expectation. Mom, I'll be home at 11. I'm not going to be home. Or I'm not going to Aunt Josie's, but I'm going to go to Grandma and Grandpa's. You can definitely set the parameters and don't feel like you have to say yes, ma'am, to every little thing they want you to do.
Yeah.
You're there to honor them, but you're not there to obey them if it's something that goes against your Christian walk or that you feel like you could discuss and renegotiate. And that's not being dishonorable. But as an adult, that rule about being obedient is no longer in place. But give your mom lots of hugs. We need to store up those hugs for when you're gone for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
And take time to appreciate your mom and dad. So when we're moms and we're launching you into that adulthood phase, is the way we see it, because you're always going to be our babies when we look at you.
Yeah.
We often feel overlooked and frankly somewhat disregarded. So since the day we held you in our arms and raised you to be independent young adults was always our goal. But then we achieve the goal and we feel jobless.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not out of a job, and we never will be, but we're pushed into an entirely new role that we aren't really ready for or prepared for. And so when you say, thanks, Mom, or wow, you didn't have to do that, or man, I love this thing you cooked for me, it makes us feel needed.
Yeah.
And our hearts do a little happy dance. Because as moms, we still want to feel like that we're necessary to your lives and that we're appreciated.
Yeah.
And it just goes a long way to set the tone for when you leave again.
Yeah.
That we're actually still worthwhile.
Yeah.
Because that's tough.
Uh-huh. Now, switching gears just a little bit,
Yeah.
I know with college life, it
Ugh.
just feels so fluid a lot of times. That was something I was really surprised by. I'm kind of still surprised by. One, how quickly you can grow with people, and two, how often just, relationship dynamics, shift and change.
Over time.
But like at a much quicker pace than I
Oh, yeah.
really have ever seen, at least, growing up where, the small town, the
Yes.
the stereotype is
Nothing
always
happened quick in a small town. You didn't know who their people were.
Yeah.
Your mom had to approve them.
Oh yeah, life always seemed to happen slower.
It does.
And then to go back from that, this very college life where everything feels like it's pushing you forward and
it's accelerating.
kind of changing, and then just to go home, it feels like, I know for me sometimes it feels like I'm pumping a brake and I'm not doing anything for 2 months, and this is just a little encouragement. Whoever's listening and you feel that way, that's pretty normal.
Yes.
It's pretty prevalent. It's pretty valid.
Yeah. And so much of that is, you are at Mach 10 at college.
Yeah.
You've got way more stuff than you have time to do, and you manage to achieve it. And then you've got the emotions of all the friends because it's so much, it is accelerated. You've got a new best friend in 2 days.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, how great is this? You've got a girlfriend, then she's gone, and then you're looking for another one. And it's a lot. It's just a lot of up and down as far as just the emotional pressure, and you're really you're sort of discovering who you are.
Yeah.
You can become sort of a new person, a new personality, a little more outgoing here because people aren't putting you into slots that you earned in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Which is great. But it is so difficult, when you go back. And the one thing I'm reminded of is, on the seventh day, God just didn't look out and put his feet up and say, yep, I'm done. On the seventh day, God created rest.
Yeah.
Rest is something God has put into creation because we need it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he didn't just lay on the seventh day. He created something powerful in our being. And rest is something I really preach at the college students.
Yeah.
Is to have margin. And if you don't have not just rest, but Sabbath rest, not on the seventh day, but every time is that Sabbath rest where you're actually saying, okay, God, I'm really tired. Can I just rest in you for a while? Whether that's, saying a prayer and going to sleep, or if it's just taking a 10-minute meditation, or just some time to reflect on what your day's been like and how you wish you'd said something different or done something. But Sabbath rest is powerful for recharging us. And, those weeks, please slow down.
Yeah.
Just get off the fast track. Sleep the 3 days like a little bear. Eat your favorite foods. Hug your mama. Hug your grandma. Tell people you love them. Just relax and be a softer you. You are not anything at home but just where you grew up. It should be a soft, safe place to land that's loving, that you can recharge. And so maybe my big thing with the boys is I told them, I was like, you're growing up and things are changing around you. So try to take more time to listen.
Yeah.
And not talk around, especially people older than you, because my boys like to feel the silence. Silence made them very uncomfortable. And once they started talking, it was like monologue. They could talk for a long time.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, hit the pause. Say 2 or 3 sentences and then let them fill in, because you'll be amazed how much wisdom that they're not going to present if not given an obvious opportunity.
Yeah.
So, and not only that, but when you start, rehashing stuff, it gets you all revved up again.
Yeah.
So, just be quiet and relaxed, and just realize you don't have to impress us. We are so enamored with you. You're our baby come home.
Yeah.
So, just know that we're enjoying the new version of you more than you can ever know, and getting to know you again.
Yeah.
And we value that, and you're just giving us little pieces each day. You'll say, oh, I don't eat this anymore. Oh, I eat that way, or heck, they might come out and be vegetarian. Well, you're going to go shopping together because you don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But just try, to realize that your parents are trying to be supportive, and they just don't even know how. This is a new phase of life for them. And just be accepting of that. And they probably made changes at home you're not going to like. Heck, I know kids that have gone home and they don't have a bedroom. It's been converted into a playroom or an office. I'm like, where am I supposed to sleep? Now, that would be a little over the top. My kids would have freaked out.
Yeah.
But my boys have become very good listeners and loving, and their wives are so thoughtful. And I think those relationship dynamics are determined, basically where everybody's giving each other space.
Mm-hmm.
So try to give your parents space, and when you finally come out of the hibernation, you finally got your belly full, actually sit and tell them about your new life.
Yeah.
And answer the questions they have, and realize you might get a little pushback. Well, why do you do that? Or why are you out so late? Are you eating right? That's the things they have to answer. They're just trying to reassure themselves you're okay, because they've been out of touch with the daily parts of the things that they were so concerned about.
Yeah.
But just gear down. Enjoy that time of Sabbath rest that you're given, and just the restful times, and make sure that when you're home, look for healthy, holy habits. If there was old routines that you're like, man, when I was at college, I realized I wished I had done that in high school, don't go back into that.
Yeah.
Or if you can't you don't want to surround yourself with people that you don't want to be like. Especially not until you're strong enough to make an effective change.
Yeah.
So I just think you need to, let things be God's way. And that protects you. Those boundaries are so important. You can let the good in and close that gate and keep the bad out.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't have any guilt about that.
Yeah.
So if something's not healthy for you, close the gate and just say, hey, I'm just not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Or hey, I don't want to talk like that anymore. Or whatever it is. The Holy Spirit's going to whisper in your ear and tell you, hey, that's not cool.
Yeah.
Let's just not do that. And then you're setting an example for somebody else. That's the way to be loving.
Yeah.
Boundaries are loving. But yeah, I'm excited. I've seen so many of y'all struggling getting through finals over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and just the dark circles under your eyes. I'm just like, want to put you in bed and say, oh, just go to sleep. It's okay. I'm like, I don't have time to sleep.
Yeah. No, every time I look in a mirror, it's like I've lost. My face looks skinnier than the last time I looked in the mirror.
You're traumatized, Turner.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Now, you mentioned don't feel like you have to prove yourself, which is something, I know I needed to hear when I was, especially those first couple trips home. But would you expand on that maybe just a little bit more?
Yes. I don't think you have to prove or apologize for the new you.
Yeah.
You are who God is forming you into being, and your parents are going to be surprised by some of the new facets in your personality, the way you talk, the way you present ideas, the things you're interested in. And I think you just need to, as long as you're glorifying God,
Yeah.
that you just need to be you, and God's gonna bless that.
Yeah.
The conversation you have and the thoughts you have are going to be, when I was a child, I thought as a child, and when I was older, I had more wisdom. Well, you have more wisdom as, a Christmas seasoned freshman than you did an August student coming out of high school.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a world of change, and every year as y'all go through college and all that, but definitely don't be prideful. That's the thing you have to do. Don't be prideful if you've got two parents that are high school graduates. Trust me, they've got a lot of common sense knowledge that will supersede all that.
Yeah.
Everybody's smart in their own way, but you don't take pride in your knowledge. You just share it.
Yeah.
If they say, I don't understand what that is, well, then explain it to them in common sense language. There's a lot of power in that. And and so much insight that they have. Well, that's just like this. And like, well, yeah, it is sort of like nailing those two boards together, or whatever it is. But I think be humble and not prideful, but be proud in the Lord of who you are at that point, and not afraid to share it at home. You don't have to go back to the old ways just because they're comfortable for your parents or for your friends. You need to evolve as far as to become the new you, and you need to be eager to share that with your parents and friends, and they'll come to terms with it. It may take a while, and they may give you some funny looks. He's getting too full of himself. He's been in the city too long, Mama.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with him? But that's okay. I think that's neat. And they're like, oh, well, Turner said this. Turner said that. When you're there, you don't get any credit. But once you leave, it's amazing. Dazzle and impress him a little bit. I'm seeing him getting money on that college. I think it's paying off.
Yeah.
He's getting smarter, Mama. It's sweet. My boys would come home with stuff. I was like, what does that word even mean? How do you spell it? Oh, Mom, you've never heard that? I'm like, never. And then they went, oh, well, that's interesting. Okay. Tell me more,
Yeah.
But it's exciting for them to see you change, especially when it's in a non-threatening manner.
Yeah.
So just be gentle with them. And I think just making sure that pride doesn't come into it. You need to still say, I'm still so proud of my roots and where I came from. And the way you honor your parents is being thankful for what they did do for you.
Yeah.
Have the focus on the positives. You chose to give birth to me.
Yeah.
I'm here on this earth. And you provided a home that I'm here back home for. And so as you're evolving to use, don't forget where you came from, and let God purify those thoughts where you're not so negative about the not healthy about it, that you can't appreciate the positives, healthy parts that your parents provided.
Yeah.
Because, God put us in that place. He chose the parents you were going to have and where you're going to be born for a reason. And sometimes it's hard for us to see some of the reasons.
Yeah.
But we just have to thank God for the things that we've taken from it, because it made us who we are today, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
We're not going to understand it this side of heaven.
Yeah. I think we can overlook a lot how tightly God knits everything together. Because, even just, if it wasn't for XYZ experience, I wouldn't do this or that and the other. I know, we met through, Chohowie, because I came to UT, didn't know anybody, noticed Harry because he was a staffer at a fuge camp that my youth group wasn't even supposed to go to.
Right.
It was a holdover from the COVID year where everything got displaced
oh my
a
gosh,
year.
Yes.
So when I tell you, there is no reason any of those circumstances should have worked out.
But for Harry.
I always joke that, I'm not a strong enough believer in coincidence. That's a big part to me of my faith that I think about pretty often is I'm not a strong enough believer in coincidence. There has to be a God and divine intervention.
And God's hand orchestrated it just for you.
Yeah. And that was just for me. And there's, 30,000 people on this campus that God has been knitting all of our lives as far apart or as close as we are together, at least, in reference to school here.
Oh, yeah. It's a sweet fellowship here at the BCM. I always enjoy visiting. It's got one of those warm, safe, loving feels that I love. That feels like home for a Christian.
Yeah.
Not perfect, but it's not about the physical structure or, it's what you make it.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a college person one time, and she got engaged, and she got engaged to a guy that was fairly wealthy, and she was definitely a lower to middle class upbringing,
Yeah.
and they were so sweet. They both gotten saved in college and did, you know, adventures together on the mission field, and just a sweet fellowship. But she was embarrassed to take her husband to be home
Yeah.
to see her modest upbringings. And he was like, he just thought it was charming,
Yeah.
but it bothered her more than it did him.
Uh-huh.
And I think for us, that's the pride.
Yeah.
The things that, we've got to be like, this is where I grew up, and I'm proud of it. This is the best my mom and dad had to offer, but they shared it with me.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah, I know that's because I mean, I've been there sometimes. Just the overcorrection from like I no longer have to meet people who've known me since I was born.
Yeah.
So you feel very protective over maybe the labels you've been struck with for years, but and you almost overcorrect, but
yeah. But I think you've got to. God helps us to put it all in a line, and realize that it's where it's what our hearts. It's what in our heart. It's not our physical dwelling or where we're raised. It's what we make out of Him. Do we make Him great?
Yeah.
But let your parents get to know you again. It's neat because they're still going to see, the funny, quirky Turner coming home.
Yeah.
It's just sort of the new improved version.
Yeah.
That God's shaping and molding, and you're there for their enjoyment.
Yeah.
And just let the whole family just relax and try to make it a relaxing time for them. Pitch in with the work and be part of the family. You're not a guest there.
Yeah.
You're a part. And I feel so sorry for the kids that say, I went home and I felt like a guest in my own home. Well, you can turn that around. Guests can just refuse to be a guest.
Yeah.
Just start, well, I'm going to go and clean this up. I'm going to do some dishes. I'm going to empty the dishwasher. I'm going to make a bed, or hey, I'm going to go sweep the back porch. I mean, you just sort of have to insinuate yourself into their lives because maybe the parents are wanting to spoil you so much that they make you feel like a guest.
Yeah.
And I think we all have a yearning to be part of the process of the dynamic of the home working.
Yeah.
So, but I'm excited to hear the stories as people come back from Christmas.
Yeah.
The freshmen are always the most entertaining because it's such a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
Sophomore, junior year, it gets easier. Sometimes senior year is really tough because that's at the point where they've been holding their breath thinking, oh, he'll move back home and work from here. And they're like, no, I'm never coming back home to live. And it's like, what? Dagger to the heart. It's hard to encourage your child to go away.
Yeah.
I can clearly remember, Toby graduated from Carson Newman in May. And he had dated a girl he met at the Louis Giglio Passion Conference from Texas.
Yeah.
She was from DBU, and they had dated long distance for about a year, and she had flown up. Lovely young woman. Loves the Lord, and is just on fire for sharing what she knows with him and raising a godly son that she's sharing with us. Her and Toby are great parents. But they weren't ready to get married, and she went to FITM to do the Fashion Institute in California. And Toby was sitting at the table filling out applications to work at all these big corporations in Atlanta, because that's where we lived. And I said, Toby, your heart's in California. Lindsay's at FITM. I was like, why are you putting applications here? Why don't you go to California? He goes, I can go to California? I'm like, yes, Toby, you can go to California. I was like, my best friend from the military, Tina, lives out in California and runs an HR. I said, would you like me to get you an interview? Yes. And so he got online and did his interviews in our little living room with his suit that we bought at Men's Warehouse.
Yeah.
And he got hired. And so the next Monday, he drove out in his little broken Ford Escape and drove across country. She met him in Texas, and they drove on across, and she lived in an apartment. They lived basically in apartments across from each other eventually.
Yeah.
And got married a couple years later and did a lot of ministry out there and stayed for 10 years total.
Yeah.
But I'm like, location is not a problem.
Yeah.
God creates, he gets rid of all that, the problems with distance and time. God's in control. If your heart's following something, go.
Yeah.
That's part of your ministry. If that's the person you're supposed to be ministering with, then you need to set yourself up for success. And it's just a beautiful story. They met at Passion. They got engaged on the spot, a year later, well, a couple of years later, on the spot where they, went up with the Louis Giglio thing. Just so sweet how, things are random. You talk about things happening,
Yeah.
orchestrated. And I'm like, and Lindsay and Toby were meant to be together. And God sent his best for both of them. And I couldn't be more thankful. But it is different, and then when college is ending, so many of these kids, how many people have gotten engaged around here lately?
Oh yeah.
It's crazy, and more to come. So it's like, it really feels accelerated to the parent.
Yeah.
It's like, even though it's it's expected but sudden in a way, it's like, 'cause we're never ready.
Yeah.
And so when your child leaves for college, I don't think most people think far enough ahead to think, well, this is the last time they're ever going to live under this roof permanently.
Yeah.
So it is different.
Yeah.
So, but I've seen you encouraging so many of the people in BCM and in our own Chilhowie Hills Fellowship, and being a Christian's fun.
Yeah.
And encouraging each other. I've seen you, encouraging some of these freshmen about going home. Don't have any expectations. Just go home, get some rest, and enjoy it. Tell me how it goes when you get back.
Yeah.
But I'm just so glad you're encouraging them and preparing them for what to expect.
Yeah.
It takes some of the pressure off.
Yeah. It makes you feel like you're not just the only person who's ever experienced it.
No.
Because rarely are you. I'd venture to say never.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I think when we stop thinking of ourselves as the only main character that's ever existed, I think it becomes a lot easier to deal with our situations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, anytime we focus on ourselves, we get all messed up.
Oh
Yeah, you pick your head up and look around, you realize everybody's just as confused and sort of like, what next, as we are. But yeah, as a mom, I know how many moms around the country are anxiously awaiting the arrival of their kids to come home, and they're going to try too hard, and they're going to mess it up. They're going to make you feel a lot of pressure to answer a lot of questions when you're exhausted. So just say, Mom, I would love to talk to you, just not now.
Yeah.
And Mom, I just want to sleep for 3 days, and I want you to fix all my favorite foods, and I'm going to give you lots of hugs.
Yeah.
And we're good. It's not that I don't want to be home. I'm just exhausted,
Yeah.
Emotionally, physically, mentally. That first semester, or any semester, it takes it all out of you.
Yeah.
So get some Sabbath rest, spend some time with the Lord, and just be gracious and remember, family is so important. Your family at home, your family here at college, and all the other little families you're going to be a part of along the way.
Yeah.
It's precious time. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kim.
Oh, you're
coming on
welcome. I
today.
enjoyed
This
it.
was awesome.
It's always a good time talking with you, Turner.
Oh yeah, anytime we talk, I always leave feeling like 5 pounds lighter.
You can't afford to lose any weight, dear.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Emotionally. Now, since it is like Christmassy season, do you have like a favorite Christmas movie you would recommend to everybody?
Oh, it ought to be something really Christian, but I love Elf. I just love Elf. There's just something about the beauty of a soft-hearted, pure childlike wonder.
Yeah.
So I love Elf, and of course we read the Christmas story every Christmas morning and all that stuff, and it comes down to baby Jesus. But there's something about just having a soft wonder in your heart.
Yeah.
About the season, and Elf gives me that feeling.
Yeah.
Even though it's not a God movie, but there, when he gets so excited, I want to be that excited about the coming of the child and the second coming of Jesus. Even now, come quickly.
Yeah.
Jesus is the reason for this season, but he's the end of the story.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a precious, precious season, and I just love the joy that movie brings.
Yeah.
What's your favorite one?
Gosh, I think I'm partial to White Christmas.
Oh,
it's a
can't
classic.
beat it. It is.
My thing is, every year, as far as like celebrity crushes go, every year I watch that movie, I fall madly in love with Rosemary Clooney.
Of course.
I remember that the movie was 80 years old, so that's probably not going to happen.
They don't make them like that anymore.
No. But it's just like that's one of my favorites. It's just so classic. It just hits you with that feeling of like,
Yeah.
Kind of like a little bit of wonder, but just like
Mm-hmm.
I just get to enjoy this.
Oh yeah.
It feels simple.
Oh yeah. I'm not a Hallmark girl. If I had to watch like 4 Hallmark things, I would lose my ever loving mind because I'm like, I know the ending. I know the ending.
Yeah.
But yeah, any of those stuff, I still love even claymation. Heck, if it's a Christmas story.
Oh yeah.
But the joy of the season of giving to others is what those are about, and the childlike joy. But there's nothing like the true Christmas story.
Yeah.
When you picture it and just the beauty and the simplicity, of a child being sent, and you were talking about everything being linked together, the chain of
Yeah.
events, they had foretold it for years, and then he comes, and not everybody recognizes it, and just
Yeah.
how special it is, how God has ordained something so special as a gift for us.
Yeah.
A free gift. It's too good to be true,
Yeah.
but it is. Yeah, but it's just, this can be such a sad season for a lot of people for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And it's just nice to find some shows that just capture the simple childlike joy of saying, you know what, there's not gonna be tears in heaven.
Yeah.
I just, I think heaven's gonna be more of a sense of awe. But the closest joy we get to hear is like giggling and hugging and laughing and just,
Yeah.
loving on each other, and that's something we all need here on earth.
Yeah.
In a healthy way. So we really, this time of year, I think, to be real, but to also, spread some joy. It's okay. Even if it's been a hard time, you say, what, that was awful, but it's over.
Yeah.
Let's do something fun.
Yeah.
Turn on some, Christmas music and everybody just dance. Or, I see that at college ministry sometimes. People just like, all of a sudden they start dancing for no good reason. I'm like, oh, I guess we're dancing. And that's what God wants us to do, things together.
Yeah.
Just because we're part of His creation, and and we should be joyful. And if we've cast all of our fears on God, what would we worry about? Why would there not be joy?
Yeah.
So there should be more joy this side of heaven if we're God's.
Yeah.
I truly believe. There's time for work, but then there's time for just pure joy for no reason other than just that we're happy that we're God's.
Yeah. Once again, thank you, Kim, for joining me.
You're
This
welcome.
was so much fun.
It was, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday at home with your family. I look forward to hearing about it.
Oh yeah, same to you.
Thank you.